right? And you blow into that balloon and it expands. Now, when you release the air, it goes back down again to a smaller balloon, and if you suck, it turns inside out, and then it keeps expanding again.
So you need an external.
So who's you?
So who's you?
Sorry.
Yeah. So which means you need an external energy to influence that, correct?
No, I believe the energy is preserved. So in space, right? If I just throw a ball in space, it will just continue forever because there's no friction to lose energy. And I believe that's the way.
Actually, they don't believe that the universe is empty. It's not necessarily empty, so it's not empty. Even there are particles, there are substance as well in the universe, so not necessarily it's empty. It's not absolute emptiness. Yeah, even according to many scientists. But that's not our discussion. Again, you confirmed with the example that you brought that there is an external power has to be there in order to do. Otherwise, bear in mind. Otherwise, if the universe is able to start itself and to reduce itself by itself, that means the universe has itself, which means it has to pre-exist before its existence. It has to decide certain things, which is before. And again, this doesn't make sense. So it has to have consciousness, which is not there to decide to do things or not to do things. And based on what? This singularity that you brought the example. Based on what? On what?
What is my evidence for the singularity existing?
Yes.
The background radiation that we measure all around us. So when you turn on a TV, right, you see that static? That's background radiation that it's measuring from that original Big Bang. It was an explosion.
Again, that Big Bang,
yes.
Again, you see here, again, that Big Bang, you said this is the production, you're talking about Big Bang. Where the Big Bang happens?
Yes.
Where?
Well, in the center of the universe as we know it.
Do you see the point? Which means the universe exists inside the universe? You're talking about the universe.
The universe is expanding, right? You agreed with me.
I agree.
Yeah.
But there is a problem. Now here you said the Big Bang happened, according to you. Where did it happen?
In the center of the universe as we know it.
So the existence of the universe, the existence of the universe as a whole, let's say, I will not say about initiated, re-initiated by the Big Bang, according to you. So it was re-initiated in the space itself, which means you initiate yourself inside yourself.
It's like the balloon again, right? Where does the balloon start to expand, but in the center of the balloon when you blow into it?
You see the point? You didn't get my point. When the universe shrinks into certain thing,
yes,
it exists inside something.
It creates the space itself.
No,
well, because we're talking about the creation of space.
Yeah. So when it goes back to singularity, as you mentioned, so it exists inside something.
No, it doesn't.
In the emptiness.
Right, yes, you got it right. There is void.
That's nonsense.
No.
Emptiness means the absence of everything.
It's not actually.
Which is nonsense.
So when we talk,
do you know what means emptiness?
Yeah. Well, yes, but there's many different senses of emptiness, right?
Okay.
So when we talk about, is this empty? Because there's air in this, right?
Yeah, that's why.
We call it empty, but it's not really empty.
Yeah. So that means it's inside something.
Well, you can talk about void or like true void where there's literally not even distance or time or something. But in space as we know it, if I'm talking about the space between me and the sun, there's distance there. There's time there, right? That's a thing.
That is, listen to me. Try to understand my point. My point is, when everything shrinks, by the way, can you call Saboor, please? Find Saboor for me. I think he is there somewhere there, but try to find him. So, you see, going back to the same point which I am trying to make. Now here, when the universe shrinks into certain point, again, that shrinking is inside something. It cannot be inside nothing.
I believe it's inside nothing. I believe that when we're describing the universe,
let's use your own logical argument. Can nothing produce anything?
I don't believe nothing produced anything.
Good. So if it's inside nothing, that means it's inside. It can't be inside nothing, because nothing, the absence of everything, including the space. You understand the point?
Well, obviously,
If it has something, that means it's not the absence of everything. When you say the emptiness, meaning when the universe is inside nothing, nothing defined as the absence of everything. Yeah, that's what you mean. Yes.
I'm not trying to contradict myself. I just meaning the
So
void
if
around.
there is something, if there is nothing, has something in it, that means it is something, basically.
So if you want me to
Which
say
literally
everything
contradict? Which literally contradict what you said?
Pardon?
Which contradicts what you said. Basically, when you said this universe shrink, so it is shrink in the emptiness, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
This is your.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, how's your name?
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
Saboor.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, basically we are discussing about the Big Bang and the existence of the universe, certain things. So we came to the point, one of the things he said, that I asked him when the Big Bang shrink, for example, he believes the universe is eternal. So it keeps shrinking and and expanding, shrinking, expanding. Yes?
Yes.
And I said to him, so if it shrink to the singularity, as he said, so it should be inside something, yeah, to shrink in. And then he said, no, it's inside the emptiness. I said, okay, if it's inside, yeah, am I quoting you right in the emptiness?
If I can just be very specific, I believe the universe itself, in its expanding and shrinking, is creating all sense of container that can exist, right? So outside the universe, it's just void. It's not expanding into anything. It is just the creation of space itself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So, when it comes to this conversation, Nicholas, are you speaking from an empirical perspective or philosophical perspective?
An empirical perspective, space is expanding.
Okay, now what I would say is it's probably best to speak of these things from a philosophical perspective rather than empirical, because we don't have empirical evidence to adjudicate between different models right at the beginning.
You disagree that space is expanding?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, I asked you, the argument that you're making, is it philosophical or is it based on empirical evidence?
Empirical evidence.
You said empirical evidence.
Yes.
I'm saying there is no empirical evidence, because what we have, when we go right to the beginning of the universe,
Yeah.
physics turns into philosophy. So the discussions you're going to have are not empirical.
I don't believe so. We have redshift, and we would need an explanation for real-world phenomenon
Right.
if we didn't have this material evidence to explain it.
Redshift we are observing,
Yes,
Okay.
it's an observable phenomenon.
but we don't observe the beginning of the universe. That's not an observation. That's not empirical. That is theoretical and philosophical.
It's deduction.
There you go. So it's not empirical.
Deduction is a question of empiricism.
Not necessarily.
That's math.
Yeah. So when it comes to
Theory.
when it
No,
comes
it's
to say Pythagoras' theorem that you deduce, you create it from first principles.
Well,
You derive it from first principles, like any formula.
there's no real principle. It's really just sort of the conservations of logic as we know.
Yeah, that is not empirical. That's a philosophical discussion.
It isn't. Logic is empirical and demonstrable.
No, it's not. Logic is not empirical.
It is. How can you show me a violation of real-world logic?
You're putting the cart before the horse. For you to make a scientific induction or inference or theory, you need to presume maths and logic.
But no, when we use math and logic, right, we're merely describing the rules as they demonstrate themselves in the empiric.
No,
Right?
I'll give you some evidence for this. Is causation known through empiricism, or is it known a priori?
Is it known through empiricism? Yes.
Okay, so if you see an effect,
Yes.
do you say an effect has a cause because of empirical evidence, or do you say an effect has a cause because of a priori philosophical assumptions?
It's because of evidence.
No, it's not. Because causality is known a priori before empiricism.
No, it's part of the empiric. I'm standing here,
so-
time is moving forward.
So let's try something.
Yeah.
This translation of the Quran, would you agree this is contingent?
Contingent upon what?
As in, it has limitations. It didn't always exist. It could have been a different way.
Sure.
Okay. Does this have a causation behind it?
Did something cause this to exist? Yes.
Okay, good. Have you seen the evidence for it, or are you assuming it has a cause?
I've seen the evidence that it would have a creation.
No, this particular book.
Yes.
Have you
Did you
seen?
see them printing
did
it?
you see someone printing it, creating it?
No.
Sure, you didn't. So you took this and you made an assumption using an a priori principle.
No, I use deduction.
Yeah, that's a priori.
There was no assumption made.
No.
All books are created by people.
No, but that idea that you just said right now, deduction, is a priori. It's before empirical evidence.
No, it's from empirical evidence.
Okay, but you just proved me right now. You said this has a cause. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen the cause?
Well, I've seen what causes it.
No. Have you seen what caused this?
Not that specific
No.
instance, no.
Okay. Are you assuming there definitely is a cause?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not empiricism.
It is.
It's not.
It is. It's conservation of mass.
No, it's not. This is known to have a cause because of a principle of deduction, which is a priori. Causality is a priori. Causality is not known through empiricism. Causality is known before empiricism.
When we're talking about empiricism, we're talking about
empiricism. Define empiricism.
Good. That's a very good point.
Let's go back to the foundation.
Yeah. Empiricism is the use of the senses to come to inferences. Okay? So you are using your senses. I am looking at that particular tree and I'm deducing from that tree that the leaves are green, photosynthesis is taking place. This is all empiricism. So the application of reason to the natural world is empiricism. Okay? So when it comes to causality, causality is not known through empiricism. Causality is known prior to empiricism.
I think there's some definitions being played around with.
Sure.
So you wouldn't say that the empirical world merely exists within my immediate gaze, right? Like when I'm asleep, the world doesn't cease to exist.
I think you're getting confused here. You are speaking from a definition's point of view that empiricism is known through the senses. You agree with this, right?
Well, I would say the empirical world exists despite my personal senses.
Right. So now you're moving on to a different point, which is, does something exist if it's not being observed?
Yes.
That's a totally different philosophical
Well,
point.
it explains the book, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You are speaking about Bishop Berkeley's view of if something is not being observed, does it exist or not? That's a totally different point to what we're speaking about.
I'm just saying that it is in the empirical world.
Okay, let's step back a bit. Like my friend just said, I gave you a definition of empiricism.
Yes.
Do you firstly agree with that definition?
I wanted to expand upon its definition.
Okay, go ahead and define it.
So, yes, it is the world as determined by senses, but not just my personal senses, but human senses in general, right? Humans, with our senses, go about, we document, we create encyclopedias about the world, right? And then we transmit that information to each other. Even if you haven't personally sensed it, it is the senses of others and us collectively that makes empiricism as it is.
But we were not there in the Big Bang.
Sorry, how is that any different to what I just said?
Well, because it explains the book, right? Because in my case, even though I didn't personally see the creation of the book, it is still empiricism that I know that all books are created.
You need to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
I gave a definition of empiricism. You said you're going to expand upon it.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand, how did you expand upon it?
So I wanted to make it not just on the personal level, but on the collective level.
All the human
Yeah,
beings.
but I said empiricism is application of reason to the natural world. Whether that's 1 human or a billion humans, it makes no difference. I'm trying to understand where you disagree with me on the definition.
In my original answer to your question, you dismissed my answer on the basis that I personally did not see the creation of this book, saying that that's not empirical. Me expanding the definition as you presented to saying that it's everyone's experience that makes the empirical world, right? That validates my answer to your original question.
It's a non sequitur. I'll tell you why.
Right.
This particular book, it's the first time you're seeing it in your life, this particular book, right?
Print.
Now, this thing, you have no evidence that somebody else has given you that they saw this being created. You assumed, using an a priori principle, that it does have a cause. So what? Let's just go back to where this conversation began from. You were speaking about the creation of the universe, and you said it's an empirical investigation. I said it's a philosophical one. And the reason it's philosophical is precisely because empiricism is blind when it comes to what happened 14 billion years ago.
There is evidence in the universe. Like when he originally asked me, right, what is the evidence for like the Big Bang? The first thing that I pointed to was background radiation, right? And that we can trace the origin and the history of our universe based on the evidence of radiation, physics, how the trajectory of certain galaxies has moved across the universe, the redshift and the expanding of space, right? And yes, that leads us with math to a particular picture, right? And
Wait, one second. None of what you said I disagreed with. I already told you, when it goes to the beginning of the universe, physics turns into philosophy.
I didn't use any philosophy.
No. I am saying it does, and you just said right now that you need to use mathematics to get there. Now, when you're using mathematics, you're not using empiricism.
What?
There's not an observation done by any human being, basically.
Let me explain to you why you're wrong about this.
Please.
Science is the application of the reason to the natural world, and in order to do science, you have to presume logic, you have to presume mathematics, you have to presume testimony. These are presumptions of science, they're not conclusions of science.
You're saying I'm putting the cart before the horse. I'm saying you're putting the cart before the horse.
How?
So you're protesting against me, saying that logic is something that we derive from the world, while you're telling me back that it's something that we merely assume about the world.
I'm saying something different. I'm saying, just listen to this slight nuance. Before you make observations from a scientific perspective, you already have a belief in logic and mathematics prior to observation. That's all I'm saying.
So just being loyal to the concept of science itself, right? When evidence presents itself, it will either validate or give me reason to dismiss an idea. And if the evidence or the circumstance of evidence presents that a certain tenet of logic is consistent, to be scientific means that you should dismiss that law of logic in place for one that conforms better to the model.
Let's test it.
Sure.
What in the empirical world can disprove causality?
I don't believe anything could.
Therefore, it's not empirical.
No, because I would like you to present.
No, you just proved my point. You just proved my point.
I'm asking for evidence.
No. Let's just go back to why you proved my point.
Okay.
What in the natural world can empirically disprove causality? You said nothing.
Because as I said, you're putting the cart before the horse.
No. That's what you're doing.
It's silly. If you present to me a single piece of evidence of causality being violated in the real world, I will abandon that principle. It's purely based off of the demonstration of evidence at hand. If causality doesn't demonstrate itself, then I won't respect it.
But you just contradicted yourself. I asked you, is there anything in the empirical world that can dismiss causality? You said no.
Well, I can change my answer.
One second. One second.
I agree.
Sorry, my friend. One second. Right now, I just asked you, can anything empirically disprove causality? You said no. Then you said, if something can empirically disprove a causal principle, you will challenge that causality. So you contradicted yourself.
You're misrepresenting what I said.
Okay, what did you say?
So, I have the principle that causality exists, right? It's the tool that I'm using to understand the world right now, right? Now, it's not something that I'm just applying to reality, it's something that I've derived from reality, right? The reason why I'm loyal to this concept of causality is merely because it's demonstrated. The second that it stops being demonstrated, I'll get rid of it.
Okay, so let me just ask you, because this was recorded, so I'm just trying to show your trail of thought, because it's actually confusing. I asked you, can anything empirically disprove causality? You said no.
I've never seen anything of the sort.
No. You initially said no.
Yes, because
And now you're saying something different. Do you see the contradiction?
No, because I already said I wanted to re-answer it to be more specific, and you said that I couldn't.
No, I didn't say you couldn't. You still are contradicting yourself. I'm going to ask you again.
Just repeat the question to him again.
Can anything empirically disprove causality?
Can anything empirically disprove causality?
The law of causality.
Yes. If I saw, if it's a confusing question.
It's not really, it's not.
It's a very confusing question. So, if
The
you
complex
were to put,
question fallacy, you put it to.
yeah. It puts it to the point of where I'm not even sure what you're really asking me, so I can't give you an honest answer.
No, wait, 1 second. No, that doesn't make any sense because the first time you gave me a confident answer.
Yes, because
And now
I
you're saying I can't give you an answer because it's a nonsensical question. So which one is it?
I didn't understand how you would abuse my answer.
Why to abuse? It doesn't mean to-
I asked you a question. You first said no. I asked
Yes.
you again. You said no. Now you're saying actually it's a nonsensical question.
Yes. So, can I explain how?
Does the question make sense to you?
No, it doesn't.
No,
So it doesn't make sense to you.
So why did you answer
Okay.
the first
Then why did you say no
I'm-
then?
Fallacy, fallacious argument he's making.
Leibniz does not believe in causality in the way that you assume it to be true. Like Leibniz says, everything that happens to something is contained in it. Something does not need to cause it by it interacting with each other. I don't know if you know about Leibniz, but that's just one philosopher who doesn't believe in causation in the way that we just accept it as true.
Okay.
Okay. So going back to the
Let's go
point.
back to the beginning of the universe. You said you have empirical evidence
Yes.
for the cyclical model. I said you don't have empirical evidence. You have, if anything, a philosophical argument.
You just derived the answer, basically, which is hypothesis.
To be more specific again, I will fully admit that I don't have evidence for the cyclical nature of the universe.
Empirical evidence.
Yes, I don't have
But
evidence.
do you have a philosophical argument?
That's what I believe with the likelihood of evidence.
See, that's where I don't disagree with you. We can have a discussion about the cyclical model from a philosophical point of view.
Yes.
But the reason why
All
I
right, let's
disagreed
have
with
it,
you,
let's
one
have
second,
it.
my friend. The reason why I disagreed with you is because you said you had empirical evidence for the
he's
beginning
changed
of
his
the
views
cyclical
now.
model,
He
and that's
changed
why
his
I
views.
wanted to correct you.
Well, it doesn't make sense to have a beginning of a cyclical model because it's cyclical. But besides the point.
No,
I'm
what I
trying
mean,
to-
what I mean is,
You were assuming in the beginning this.
the empirical evidence that you claimed you had for the cyclical model, I said was not empirical, was philosophical.
The evidence I was trying to point to was that there was a Big Bang at all. Not about the nature of it being cyclical or it being the first cause of all the universe.
I heard you in the beginning say that you
Cyclical.
believe the universe goes through these cycles.
I did.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you brought the
okay.
balloon, and you brought the balloon as well,
And
as
you
an
said you
example.
had empirical evidence for it, and I said you don't have empirical evidence
Not
for
the
it.
cyclical
That's why you
nature.
went down this little rabbit hole.
Not the cyclical nature, just the Big Bang.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So now
Okay, fine.
we narrow it down. Now here, because in the beginning you said about the evidence is about that the universe is like a balloon. By the way, it's recorded, by the way.
Yeah.
Because he said it's like a balloon. You blow air and then expand, then it goes flat, then it expand. This is the example that you were talking in the beginning. Yes.
Yep.
Then you were discussing in the beginning that you didn't mention as a philosophical argument. You were adamant to say that
It's
there is
empirical
empirical evidence for that, where in fact is not empirical evidence. Now here we are discussing, you are narrowing it to the Big
right.
Bang.
Yes.
You are narrowing it to that point.
Okay.
See the point?
Let's have yours then. Let's have yours.
Okay, now.
Let's have